I love this book. Just listen to this quote. She thought, oh, and this is on the date, April 6th, 1917, the day that the United States entered World War I. She thought, if I open this envelope 50 years from now, I will be again as I am now, and there will no being old for me. There is a long, long time yet before 50 years, millions of hours of time, but 1 hour has gone already since I sat here. 1 hour less to live. 1 hour gone away from all the hours of my life. Dear God, she prayed, let me be something every minute of every hour of my life. Let me be gay, let me be sad, let me be cold, let me be warm, let me be hungry, have too much to eat, let me be ragged or well-dressed, let me be sincere, be deceitful, let me be truthful, let me be a liar, let me be honorable, and let me sin. Only let me be something every blessed minute. And when I sleep, let me dream all the time so that not one little piece of living is ever lost. Those are the words of Francie Nolan. She was 15 years and 4 months old on that day. And those words kind of sum up for me what this book is about. Anna Quindlen wrote the foreword to this book, and she actually said it so well. And this book is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. And Anna Quindlen said, you know, it's so hard when somebody asks what a book is about. And this is a book, as many are, that you can't just sum it up to a plot line. It is a book about what it means to be human. She said that she kind of likened it to Anne of Green Gables. And funny, because those books, that series Anne of Green Gables, I read over and over 1,000,000 times in my childhood. Loved Anne. And she said, you know, like, you can't say what the plot of Anne of Green Gables is. It's just about the life of a girl. It's about what it means to be human. And she said those who loved Anne of Green Gables, you know, growing up as a child, it was a book for children, and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is a book for adults. It's exactly the kind of book that I would love to ask my 16-year-old daughter to read. It is a work of fiction, but it is sort of autobiographical, as the author grew up in Brooklyn, and she draws from her own experiences of growing up in Brooklyn. The story begins in 1912 when Francie is 11 years old. I think it would be safe to say that Francie grew up in poverty. Her father, while he was a very kind and loving man, and Francie loved him dearly, he was an alcoholic and had trouble keeping a job. So Francie's mother, Katie, worked many long, hard hours to be able to help make ends meet. And so Francie takes great pleasure in just the smallest things. The first 3 chapters of the book describe what a typical Saturday would look like, and that they describe one particular Saturday and just the day that Francie looked forward to all week. One of the events of that day was going to the library. Francie loved to read, and she was certain that the library had every book in the world she couldn't even imagine, and her goal was to read every single book in the world. So she began with the A's, and she, you know, the authors, you know, Alcott, and just began reading. At this point in the book, she had made her way to the B's, and so her goal was to read all of the books. And so on Saturdays, she would go in to get her book. The other one of the other events of that day was they would go to see the junk collector on Saturday. She and her little brother Neely would collect, as all the neighborhood kids did, would collect junk all week long and take it to the junk collector on Saturday mornings, and he would pay them a little bit of change for their junk, so to speak. And Francie would take all hers and Neely's junk in, because the junk collector liked little girls better than little boys and would get more money. But that particular day, she came out and said, well, we made 16 cents plus a pinching penny. So the pinching penny was any little girl who went in there, if they could withstand him pinching their cheeks without flinching, they got an extra penny. So Francie and Neely would always divide that money in half. Half of that money would go into a can that was nailed down in a closet in the back of their house, and it was to save money, and they would divide the rest of it. And Francie used her change to go buy candy. She bought pink and white striped peppermints that day. And then she describes the event that she had looked forward to all week long, and that was going out onto her third floor fire escape. They lived up on the third floor, and to sit out there, she arranged her candies, her little mints, into a bowl in a pretty way. She took those mints, a glass of ice water, and her book out to the fire escape and sat there and just enjoyed the day. Doesn't that sound lovely? The tree that the book speaks of, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, is a tree that Francie can see from that. It's the only tree that grows in her yard, and she looks at it as she sits out on that fire escape. She said some people called it the tree of heaven. No matter where its seed fell, it made a tree which struggled to reach the sky. It grew in boarded up lots and out of neglected rubbish heaps, and it was the only tree that grew out of cement. It grew lushly, but only in the tenements districts. She said it's the kind of tree that loves poor people. They didn't have all the pretty trees, but this tree grew up out of cement. And in many ways, this tree was symbolic of Francie's life through all her struggles and the trials that she had. She was able to grow into a beautiful woman who was strong and just had a lot of strength, a lot like that tree. This felt like a book about hope. You see hope sprinkled all through it. Katie, her mom, wanted a better life for her children. That's like the tin can that we were talking about that I mentioned earlier. You know, from the very beginning, she took that little tin can and nailed it on the floor of each closet. And when they moved, that tin can would get pried up and moved along with them. And anytime there was a little extra change, it went into that tin can. And the purpose of that can was so that one day they could use the money to buy their own property. Katie had, before Francie was born, she asked her mom, how can this little girl have a life that is not so difficult as my life was? And her mom suggested, you need to teach her everything that you know, everything. And you need to read to her every day. And here's what you need to read to her. You need to read to her one page of the Bible and one page from Shakespeare every single day. And that became like a religion in their home. From the time that she was a baby and her brother was a baby, they read from a Gideon Bible that was picked up in a hotel by Sissy, Katie's sister, a Gideon Bible and an old volume of Shakespeare works. Every day they read one page of each, and Katie read those to her children until they were old enough to read, and then they read them out loud to her. And Francie absorbs absolutely everything. She absorbs the good in life. She also absorbs the bad. She feels things very deeply. One time she was outside as a child and watched as a group of women threw rocks, literally stoned a young unwed mother because they thought she wasn't fit to be walking around town with her baby. And Katie, like I said, just felt it so deeply. She said, as long as I live, I will never have a woman for a friend. I will never trust any woman again. She really had, I guess, a heart of flesh, not a heart of stone, a heart of flesh. She was warm and sensitive and tender. As the author of the book was a writer, so was Francie. From the time Francie was able to write, she was writing things, and in her very young life, she wrote sweet little vignettes about pretty things, the stars and the trees and the butterflies and the birds. But as she got older and began to experience more of what could be called the ugliness of life, she wrote about that also. And at one point, her teacher called her aside and said, "You used to be such a beautiful writer. Why are you writing about these ugly things?" And she said, and Katie said, "But these are," I keep calling her Katie, Francie said, "But these are the things that, you know, these things are real." And the teacher said, "But poverty, starvation, and drunkenness are ugly subjects to choose. We all admit these things exist, but one doesn't write about them." But the thing is, Francie knew that yes, these things existed, they were real, they were very much a very real part of her life, and yet she knew that life was still worth living. She looked forward to life and what life would hold. She wrote in her diary on the day that she turned 13, December 15th, "Today I enter my teens. What will the year bring forth? I wonder." Interestingly, I learned that we have the same birthday. But anyway, so the book goes. It just kind of makes you glad to be alive. And incidentally, Brooklyn is not just the setting for the story. Katie is a Brooklynite through and through. It is crucial to who she is. At one point in the story, you hear that she's taking some evening, I guess she was about 15 or 16, she's taken some, I said Katie again, I mean Francie. She's taking some classes at the settlement house, and that settlement house just kind of popped up. And I thought, I don't really know what the settlement house is, so I did a little research, and around the end of the 19th century, 20th centuries, settlement houses were built in cities that had a lot of poverty to help, I guess, combat the effects of poverty for the children. And classes were taught by volunteers who were more upper class people, but they would teach skills. And Francie took classes in sewing and dancing, and she was just always eager to learn more. She loved life and loved learning, and she loved living in Brooklyn. Like I said, that was a major part. So you see a lot about Brooklyn and the type of place that Brooklyn was at that time in our history. So this book is almost 500 pages, but it is really easy reading. You will just absolutely devour it. I literally probably could read this book every single year and not get tired of it. So I think that I am going to go place this book in my daughter's hands right now. And I hope to see you again next week as we look at another book in my 52 book challenge. Thanks for watching.